Hello and welcome to the Get Better Chelmsford podcast with your hosts Richard Brinkley and myself, Tasha Katz. This is the podcast where we talk all about the no-nonsense side of marketing, where we champion Chelmsford-based businesses and entrepreneurs who are testing, learning and growing, and where we discover that the journey is often more exciting than the destination.
Jake, welcome to the show.
Lovely to be here.
Series 2, great to have you on. I know we've tried for a while to get you on, so finally here.
Yeah.
We'll dig into exactly who you are, what you do, and the passions. Also want to just sort of touch on where you're based as well, because that's relevant to Chelmsford. But perhaps kick us off, start with, as is tradition on the show, what your definition or view of marketing is.
Yeah. So thanks for having me, and apologies it's taken this long. Certainly my fault. So I'm certainly no marketing guru and or expert, and I wouldn't say it's something we're blessed with at Sport for Confidence. We have sort of a digital marketing presence, but I wouldn't say we have a document that details this is exactly what we do. But in preparation for this question that I knew you was going to ask me, I thought about what it does mean to me, and I thought about what it does mean to Sport for Confidence. And as a not-for-profit CIC, community interest company, operating in Essex and nationally, but providing healthcare, I found what I felt was a marketing strategy slightly different to perhaps a more straightforward strategy, if that makes sense. So, for example, and I wanted to put the water bottle there to help me with this example, a marketing strategy for a water bottle, like 99% of the time, that's going to do what the marketing strategy says. So it does what it says on the tin. It's there to provide a drink to someone. And I think at Sport for Confidence, I don't know if that's a ridiculous example, but this is where my thinking was going. Because we're an organisation that have people and have an approach and have professions, trying to market that I find is difficult to what perhaps a water bottle would be, or like a tangible item of some sort. So to do that, we believe in the impact that we create. So we've got incredibly dynamic professionals and people, and we have a real clear approach to what we want to do. And for me, as an organisation, we then create this impact in local spaces and places, and we create evidence over time that for us contributes to the way we market. And what happens, or what has happened in the past, is that moment of delivery creates the impact for participants, but creates the impact for commissioning managers and funding individuals that then lead to expansion and or replication of service provision. And for me, that's how we market. And if I think I have to answer your question slightly more succinctly, it's by the way we make people feel. It's probably how I think we market Sport for Confidence.
I'm smiling, Jake, because it's probably the most beautifully crafted answer.
Christ.
Yeah.
in many ways, because you started the answer with, we don't have a plan, we don't really have anything. And I think what you're talking about is this piece of paper that says, we're going to do, this is what we say, this is when we say it, this is how much that costs, and so on. When actually what you've articulated is a deliberate but not a deliberate attempt, because you haven't gone and crafted a marketing plan. What you've gone out there and is you've set out a purpose and a mission. You've set some rules. It's good people. It's about fantastic experience. It's about wicked delivery. It's about caring. It's about making a difference. And you even, without saying the word case study, you actually described what a case study is in terms of doing things really well and then being able to showcase those.
Yeah.
So I think in a way, and I think why we like to ask the question is because there is no right or wrong answer. And I think that's one of the things we need to dispel with this show, is that no one has to come up with, there is a formula for a marketing plan. There is some deliverables and some quite clear, planning documents and templates you can use. But the reality is, if you can deliver upon your purpose and your mission, you'd be a great business. You are intrinsically marketing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you've just described.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think to add to that, there's a level of flexibility with our approach, because we're not using a product, which probably doesn't change, but we are using people that carry methods, approaches, emotions and feelings. We've set up a framework, we've set up an approach. We then invest in people that share that similar purpose as to what the organisation does, and then provide that autonomy to go and do it. And there's a level of trust handed over, I believe, to employees and our entire workforce to go, here's a bit of a rule book, but if you're going to skip a few pages and go to page 10 instead of follow it 1, 2, 3, 4, that's fine, because we trust in you and we trust in the values that you've shown us through recruitment, etc. And then that subsequently markets the organisation, so on and so on.
Yeah. I mean, this is why we wanted this guy on. Like, I think, you know, that, again, what you've just articulated is hugely inspiring. And I think if people could understand and listen to that again about the set of values that you set, the trust within employees, and you know, I guess this isn't really written down anywhere. It's just a shared belief amongst you that you're all guardians of this culture that has meant, yeah, we haven't needed a plan because we've got that bit so right. And we haven't needed a plan because we've organically grown and we're aligned in our thinking. Actually, that's why you guys are successful.
Yeah. We've got a group of people that want to create positive change, and we've got employees and volunteers and board members that all want to prevent ill health and promote good health. And we do that using sport and physical activity, and we do that to those individuals furthest away from sport and physical activity. And effectively, that's why we exist. And yeah, I love my job. Just to finish nicely on that. I generally do.
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody that speaks with you, Jake, can see the passion is very obvious, and that clearly runs throughout the organisation. I think just for some of our listeners who aren't, that maybe they've never heard of Sports for Confidence, can you talk us through who you guys are and how your journey with Sports for Confidence began?
Yeah, so if I do my journey and then I'll go into the company. I've had a bit of a weird journey into probably where I am. I left college many years ago now, it feels like, not really knowing what to do. And I was at that crossroads of either going to university or gaining employment. My mum's a nurse and has always had that caring nature within her, and sort of encouraged me just to look at what care jobs were available. And I happened to stumble upon a job where I used to locally live in Essex. And I got a job as a carer in a residential home with adult males with a learning disability, or who presented with challenging behaviour. And still to this day, I really hold on to this, that employment and the experiences that I gained. I remember on my first day, and just to protect the individual's identity, I'll use the name Tom. I walked into the living room on my first day, bearing in mind I was probably 18 or 19. I had Brill cream in my hair to the right. Like, I felt confident / quite self-assured at the time. And Tom grabbed me in a headlock and sneezed and snotted in my hair. And at that moment, I obviously just questioned what I was doing and where I was and why I was doing it. I remember locking myself in a toilet and sort of giving myself a pep talk to sort of say, you can do this. And I learned some unbelievable coping strategies and built significant resilience in that job that I then stayed with for about 2.5 years. And in that moment, not that I realised it at that point, Tom was just communicating in the way he communicates. And he left that living room laughing and giggling, knowing full well what he had done. To me, a new member of staff, and that was the beginning of what was a really meaningful relationship. And from that moment onwards, I'd say give or take a couple of weeks, because it was tough, I fell in love with it. I generally fell in love with supporting those that needed additional support, those that needed someone to look out for them, to nurture, to support, to empower, to encourage. And I stayed there for about 2.5 years, loved it. Shift work, early mornings, late nights, night shifts. I then sort of moved in and around to other settings within care. So I went to a locked hospital with individuals that were under section, which was a really incredible eye-opening experience, but provided a lot of experience for me. I then moved into a learning disability community nursing team. Again, lots of different experience. And that's probably my first foray into the NHS. So understanding what it was like to work for NHS back then. And I think at that point, I was probably set on becoming a nurse. And due to a number of reasons, it just didn't happen. And I was sitting there wondering what I should do. I think alongside that was probably 6 to 7 years of employment. I've woke up every day. I've played football. I've loved physical activity. I've done every sport that probably exists. I've loved that feeling of what physical activity can provide to me. The friends I've made are still my friends to this day. I really understood the power of sport and physical activity. And then in my community nursing job, the founder of Sport for Confidence, Lindsay Barrett, walked in and said, I need someone that loves working with disabled people, and I love someone that loves sport and physical activity. And I'm sort of scratching my head going, well, that sounds quite good to me. At the time, I was in a stable Band 4 secure job with the NHS. Security was fantastic. I lived at home. It was comfortable. I certainly wasn't going through the motions, but life was comfortable. And I met Lindsay. The organisation was probably about 1 or 2 years of age. She had 5 members of staff. They offered me a 6 months secondment, and I was like, what do I do? And well, I guess you know what I did. I took the jump, and I think after about 3 months of the secondment, they offered me a full-time job, and it happened to just be at the right time that the organisation was growing. And yeah, I've ultimately never looked back. And I've been here for now 8 years, and I've been here in unbelievable moments of the COVID pandemic, in challenging times regarding the economy. And still, I confidently say that we put our values first, and that we've grown and evolved and grown massively and quickly to support so many local people and now sort of national people. So yeah.
Before you go into more detail on the business then, listening to you talk just then, I mean, it's hard to not be inspired, right? And I hope everyone listens to it, whether they work in business or whatever. Talk to me about your mindset. So there's a few moments that you've just described there in just a couple of minutes where you could have easily checked out. Yeah, there's a couple of sliding doors moments where maybe, Tom gets you in the headlock and you think, no, game over for me. Yeah, I'm sure there's a few more along the way, just based on what you've described. And then obviously, big significant moment when Lindsay comes across and goes, hey, I feel like I've built a job for you. What's your mindset? What kind of person are you to have gone through that? Because I think most people would probably listen to that and go, I couldn't do that. Yeah. I couldn't do that.
I think I'm relatively relaxed in moments, and now my wife would probably say otherwise in other moments, but I take things for what they are in the moment. I don't take things too seriously. And if I think of some of those examples, so Tom, the participant that I worked with back then, there was no harm. Yes, it was scary at the time, but there was no harm done. And it came from a place of a lack of understanding and education. At that point, I didn't really understand the way Tom communicated. I didn't understand why he did what he did. But as soon as I did, it all came together, because actually that is who Tom is, and that's his upbringing, that's his life, that's the disabilities that he's living with. And my purpose in that moment was to support him the best of my ability. And at that point, you have to adapt. And I had to adapt very quickly. And I had to not only adapt my approach, but I had to adapt my mindset on individuals with disabilities to ensure that I was able to do what I wanted to do, which was give back. I guess down the line, like sort of leading the organisation and in moments, so COVID, for example, I'll never forget, we were probably 7 to 10 days shy of going under. Like, we're an organisation, which I'll come into about the company, that predominantly works out of leisure centres. Well, as soon as COVID hit, right, leisure centres were the first to shut. So you're sitting there scratching your head going, I've got 25 members of staff. Every leisure provider that we operate in is now shut. What do we do? And obviously the furlough support from the government was wonderful in one breath, but it was only wonderful we had cash to pay staff first to then reimburse it. So that actually we had some complications at that point to go, well, that is great, but as long as you've got the money, which at the time we didn't. So those moments, I sort of, I've gained resilience to overcome them. I've also never taken too much too personally. And I've always been that person that puts one foot in front of the other and works hard. And my moral compass doesn't shift that much, as long as I know the decision that I'm making at that point in time, whilst it might be a difficult one, is in the best interests of perhaps those people that we are serving and supporting.
And I guess just to square the circle, and perhaps the one more I would add is that, do you find that your personality inside the organisation is the same as at home and at football and all those kind of things? Are you the same guy? Because I think, you're describing empathy, resilience and everything, which are great qualities to have as a human being, but also as an employer.
Yeah.
You have a small business, medium business, growing businesses. You've got to have all of those things. So is that the last one on that list that would make you perfect?
No,
just to embarrass you further.
No. I mean, what is perfect, right? I'm certainly not perfect. I definitely have traits that just cross over in my personal life, and there's strengths and weakness to me and my character that in moments in my job I get right and I get wrong, and in moments in my personal life I get right and I get wrong. In terms of physical activity, I find security and safety whilst entering the football field, and I think that comes from a place of 3 children, quite a stressful job at most of the time, and then I get that opportunity to run around with people that are now I've made friends. And look, it's a half decent stand. I'm really proud to continue to play at my ripe age, but it provides me that chance just to enjoy physical activity, and I love football, and I love the responsibility that comes with football, but also the freedom that I get from still engaging. And I guess that passion for physical activity is obviously beneficial to the organisation. So yeah, there's definitely there's a crossover of.
I mean, what you're talking about in sport, and it gives you that confidence and that freedom. That's what you, as an organisation, are offering your participants, right? You go out to these leisure centres, and I think I want to understand a bit more about how Sports for Confidence is, how the organisation is set up. I know that you have teams of occupational therapists and then coaches, but there's also lots of volunteers, and how. So if you walk us through that, because it's quite an interesting dynamic, right?
Totally.
Lots of people.
So it's certainly a unique approach. There, as far as we're aware, that I don't know of any other organisation that perhaps employs occupational therapists and coaches. We tend to describe our delivery model as sort of I'd say a triple threat. So what's unique to our approach is we've got occupational therapists that are delivering therapy clinically in a non-traditional environment. So OT, occupational therapists, will exist in hospitals and in community settings, in primary care networks. We employ those individuals, and then we put them into community assets, most notably leisure centres. We then pair them up with coaching profession. So we find incredibly inclusive and warm and friendly and confident coaches. We put them together. And then what contributes to a successful delivery model is then the voice of lived experience. So when I say that, I sort of mean our participants. I mean experts, people that are experts in their own lives. And the 3 of them, I think, it absolutely contributes to who we are, what we do, and is where probably our super strength lies. In terms of a perspective for a participant accessing our services, a participant will be referred to Sport for Confidence from a number of different sources. They'll come in through our single point of access team, which is led by an occupational therapist. They'll complete an initial assessment, no different to initial assessment that might take place in a more traditional setting, NHS environment. And then in that moment, the OT will identify objectives and goals, consider external referrals, but then support that person into the leisure centre environment if that is the appropriate intervention at that time. And then that person gets the opportunity to, 1, engage locally, 2, engage in physical activity, and to do it in the right place at the right time, in the right way. And that's very much sort of, I would say, our ethos throughout.
And just so we can all get a stronger vision in our head, what might a session look like? How many people, what kind of activities, how long is it? What kinds of things are you actually delivering?
Sure. So I think that's like the beauty of the model. So you've got the therapy aspect of the model, which is very much led and overseen by the occupational therapist, and then very much the responsibility of the coach to deliver the physical activity components. So within that, what a participant might come through an OT first, and there'll be a bit of one-to-one relationship building, identify of goals. And then as a consequence of that, the participant then might participate in swimming or bocce or football or tennis. Sessions across Essex in all of our areas where we deliver are often co-led by population need and or participant need. So in certain areas, let me think, tendering, for example, there's a high level of older people referrals. And as a result, some of the sessions are tailored specifically around strength and balance. Some of them are tailored around creating that social community connection, to provide that opportunity to make peers and to socialise for perhaps older people that perhaps are isolated. But yeah, like you name a sport, we give it a go. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And our coaches are there to be that. For me, that the coach's role within Sport for Confidence is what the participants come back to. They are incredibly talented individuals with confidence and the skills, and they ensure that participants experience a first positive experience of physical activity. And that's what it will look like across all of our delivery models.
Bring it back to the start, when you were explaining what marketing is for you, and you were talking about it's creating that positive impact. How do you get that out there? Because you've mentioned already how some individuals, they may be referred to Sports for Confidence via external sources. How are you getting out there? Because obviously being in a leisure centre, you've got that physical presence, which probably helps a lot. You've got people coming in every day, at the weekends, families and whatever, and they see you, they might ask questions. But if you're trying to get to the people that really need it, that might not be able to get to those leisure centres to start with, and they're waiting on somebody else, I'd imagine maybe their GP or whoever that might be, to refer them to you guys, how do you get that to them?
So there's often a term used, and it's used less so now, but I think this is a good example to say, around hard to reach groups. And I guess our response to that is probably, are individuals hard to reach, or is society hard to access? And I'd say we sort of live and die by that, right? Because are they hard to reach, or is actually society just not built in a way that people can participate and engage in meaningful activity? So for those individuals, yes, physical presence. There is a wonderful opportunity to ensure that if we provide a really positive experience, word of mouth then creates that opportunity to market what is happening. And we tend to, I'd say that happens a lot. That really does. So we create, I would say, communities of people that come together, all who have different walks of life, but all want to feel a sense of belonging. And I believe in our approach and the way Sport for Confidence delivery models are set up, we provide that opportunity to do so. There is so many individuals with different disabilities, different ages, who come together all to take part in sport physical activity, and then the word of mouth that the positive experience that they take part in then leads to word of mouth sharing that, I would say.
When you talk about society and it not being structured in the right way, what do you mean by that? Are you referring to, like, well, if I'm a child, I can go and access a football club over there, but not everyone can just access those football clubs? Or what do you mean about the structure of society being a challenge?
It's a great question. Probably requires a big answer. I don't know if I've got a big answer for that. I guess from our experience, look, we set out to reduce barriers and to make reasonable adjustments, because everyone has the right to participate in sport and physical activity. It's a human fundamental right. And a barrier, for example, a real life barrier that is a really good example, is cashless society, right? So we live in a world of cashless. Now, if I was to speculate, I would say of our participants that we engage with, for reasons specific to them, at least 60 to 70% of individuals won't be able to operate in a cashless society. Now, that might be due to understanding and cognitive ability to understand how to use an app. Firstly, to even have a bank account. Individuals that we support might use carers to support them with that. So all of a sudden, look, we're in a cashless society, and I'm not saying I'm anti-cashless, because I see why it's happening, see why it's taking over. And actually, we sit here as a provider to go, we need to encourage the disabled community to keep up, right? We've got to try and upskill disabled participants to be able to keep up with this drive to go cashless. I guess I'd probably sit here and go, as long as there's reasonable adjustments made in different areas to ensure that these individuals are not secluded because of this drive, then we're fine with that. But if that's not the case, then I think that's where I feel injustices perhaps exist. So that's an example. The cashless one is an example. Transport might be another barrier to someone's participation. There's lots of barriers that exist that,
And kind of a segue on that is you mentioned leisure centres as sort of primary asset, but didn't say schools. Have you deliberately not said schools, or do you do a lot of work in there as well? Because that feels like a good way in some respects.
It's definitely a preventative way in, right? To support children to engage in physical activity as early as possible, to provide that positive experience, is only going to lead to healthier habits long term. Our delivery model is adults only, so we're sort of a 16 plus. So we don't do, I would say, much specifically with schools. We do a lot with colleges, perhaps. So like transitional ages between 15, 16, 17 and 18, where a lot of change is happening for perhaps a person with a disability that's leaving a very structured SEND school and going into the big wide world with perhaps significant apprehension around what is now their routine going to be. So we do a lot of work around colleges of that. But yeah, I guess there's value in ensuring, obviously, children engage in physical activity and have a positive experience. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily something we do.
And I guess you're in that category because that's where the majority of both the need and business opportunity, because at the end of the day, you need to pay people, and there's got to be a commercial gain to it. What is the size of that? I'm not going to say, I won't frame it as what's the size of the opportunity for Sport for Confidence, but what is the size of the challenge, the problem across the country? Maybe it's a global challenge as well, but within the county and the country, how many more Sport for Confidences do we need to solve some of these problems? Because by the same token, you've been in the NHS, and it feels like to me, when we're in a society where the NHS is creaking and we all need solutions to how to stop it creaking, in many ways it feels like you are part of a solution because it's prevention.
I mean, the NHS creaking is probably an understatement. And I say that, I love the NHS, it's absolutely a purpose, but we're in this situation we are. We certainly see ourselves as a bit of a solution, because we're definitely, like you say, in the preventative space. We're using physical activity as a prevention to ill health to promote good health. We're at a really interesting crossroads, because we're fortunate enough, and I say that because I've been there in the times where the organisation has been challenged and struggled, and I've been worried about cash flow and staffing issues and service provisions coming to an end. We've come through that, and we're in a really positive and fortunate position to be presented with opportunities to go, we've seen the impact and evidence that you guys are doing over there, and we want a piece of that. I guess from a business point of view, you're totally right. We have to run and we have to sustain the business. I think operating as a not-for-profit and provides us with that opportunity to be in control of what we take on and what we don't take on. I feel like I'm sort of going here, there and everywhere at the moment, but I guess we often ask ourselves, can we pick this model up and go to Manchester, for example? Now, you then cross the roads of, well, how do you do that? And I often say to myself, and we share this with the team. We had a CPD week in Christmas where the team come together, and myself and Lindsay did this update in relation to where we're at as a company, right? We're relatively transparent. I'd say you're really transparent actually for an organisation, and we present these ideas of opportunity that we share with staff to let them know on where the business direction is going. And one of them is national expansion. Now, how do you do that? Do you hand over control and go forward with a bit of a licensing / franchising model? But how do you then monitor the quality? How do you find value-driven individuals like myself and all of my colleagues that are passionate and wake up every morning wanting to make a change with people that live 4.5 hours away? Or do you keep control? So, yeah, keep control. We'll go to Manchester. I don't know how my wife would feel about me going to Manchester every other week to see how the model's going, and all my children. But we're, in response to your question, like, look, I think we're at a fortunate position that we're being presented with those opportunities, and it's now a really telling time as to how we do that. Will we get it right? Will we get it wrong? Yes to both of them. I think maybe one of the beauties of our model is that we also appreciate we're not the only solution. It can't just be us. Our hashtag is play your part, and that's very much been our slogan since we started in 2016. And for me, that still really rings true. It's everyone's responsibility, right, to make reasonable adjustments and to ensure that we have a mindset that it ensures that we support disabled people as and when and how they need it. Statutory services and local authorities and community organisations and any type of organisation should be setting out to ensure that their services can be provided to the disabled community. And I'd say we focus a lot around linking that to workforce development. If participants become solely reliant on sport for confidence, we're not doing the job right, because effectively we will be there in moments, but we might also not be. And we'll do so much more harm if we create a model of practice that, if we take it away, will create absolute uproar and challenge to participants, because we've perhaps not been able to upskill and or empower participants to feel confident within their settings. Look, leisure centres are going to be there. They're going to be there when the government changes hands. They're going to be there when leisure providers change hands. So we've got to create that environment to be inclusive and to upskill their workforce development to go, no, we can handle this, with or without us, which sounds, from a business perspective, daft, right? Because effectively we're suggesting that leisure providers, if we support them well enough, could provide the service that we want to. Now, look, to get to that stage is going to take years and years and years. And there'll always be a place, I think, for Sport for Confidence, because we've never sat still, if I'm honest. We've been an organisation that adapts to what's happening within health, within social care, within society. And hopefully we've always been one step ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Well, again, without saying it, you've described it beautifully around sort of innovation and, continuing to change the model, build the model as the demands change or other people catch up, or you build an army of people that can do some of the things, but then what next? I guess, how have attitudes changed? Because obviously you say that at the beginning, you mentioned it's quite a new model. There's not loads of competitors out there doing it in the same way. Maybe some people have got the same purposes, and that's maybe the play your part thing. We're all trying to do it, but in different ways. I guess it's difficult to build that business, and sometimes you say cash flow's challenging and all these bits, but sounds, I'm not going to say comfortable, because we should never be comfortable, but better these days. Is that because more and more people are seeing the results and believing and being more accepting of it? And how many people have we got to influence and convince this is a good model before? Yeah. And maybe that's one of the growth strategies, is actually some people are going to start to go, Christ, I've woken up when I've realised we've got to do it that way. These guys, you might not have a choice but to grow when those powers be. We've got to do it this way.
Yeah, gosh, you're asking me some tough questions. So we've had massive support, and this I take it back to, we can't do this alone. But there is also, I think, a beauty and a way of making sure you collaborate with purpose and build meaningful relationships to enable services like us to continue to grow. And we've had a wonderful relationship with Essex County Council that have supported us no end. And we've had a wonderful relationship with likes of Active Essex, who have also helped us from day one. And that then filters into adult social care. So then all of a sudden you're creating a network of, I would say, advocates / influencers that are watching our approach and going, that is the way. That is certainly the way. I think our approach, we work alongside different approaches. So our approach is very much around social model of disability, and what exists out there is also medical model approaches, right? And there's a place for both of them. And we're not saying that it should be only social model and it shouldn't be medical. I guess what's important to us is that we're just supporting the person in front of us. So we're not a service that delivers a learning disability service for people with learning disabilities, or we're not a mental health service that delivers a service to mental health individuals. We're a service that is delivering to Dave, Trevor, Sally, and that's probably an approach we would love to share for us, from our perspective. certain individuals are not always, perhaps, don't always, certain individuals and don't always choose the disability that they're given. There's no control over that. And I guess we acknowledge that. And as a result of that, we want to support the person in front of us. And how do we do that? Is by building a meaningful, trusted, safe relationship and reduce barriers and make reasonable adjustments to just ensure that you have a sense of belonging and you can participate in sport and physical activity, regardless of everything else that's happened in your life and all that you live with. Don't know if I've answered your question, but
no, there's you keep bringing it back to this idea of impact, this idea of working with the individual, empowering them. There's so much that sport can do for all of us, for everybody. It's great for mental health. I think more and more people are talking about that as it being, it's good for our mental health, not just our physical health. It's good for community building, for social building, all of that lovely stuff. And I'm seeing it more on Instagram. I think it's Jamila Jamil, for example. She talks a lot about taking back sport, or taking back fitness for your mental health and things like that. So it's really great to see that. And you guys are almost kind of the flag bearers in the model that you're delivering. Is there kind of a case study or like a few standout examples of, where you've seen the transformative power of what you've been doing at Sports for Confidence for individuals?
There's so many, so many. And do you know what's sometimes our name is a bit of a misconception, actually, because sport for confidence, in moments, confidence adds real strength to who we are. In moments, the word sport puts lots of people off within a matter of seconds. So that's an interesting misconception that we're constantly going back and forth as to whether it's right or wrong, but that's a big piece of work. I guess the primary reason that lots of participants come to us is not to get fitter. And I think that's quite an important thing to say. So whilst we provide sport and physical activity, I wouldn't say the primary outcome for lots of our participants is to get fitter. And whilst it's important to increase their activity levels, we're working with participants that are reaping the absolute benefits of a social circle, trusted network of people that can support them for better, using physical activity as prevention to ill health and promotion to good health. I guess my favourite case study stories are always of those individuals that perhaps come to us that lack support, that are relatively independent in their own lives, but perhaps fall through the gap, so don't have much support from care services or care packages, live independent lives, but border on the line of being a bit vulnerable at times and need that sort of informal support. And I can think of one individual that has come to us that was incredibly anxious, socially isolated, and it took a significant amount of time for the OT to grade activities and spend time with them in the car park. And that might have been 5 minutes for 6 weeks, every week, just in the car park, building a relationship and a conversation that then gave that individual the confidence to come inside the building. That then took another 6 weeks for that individual to get through the queue, which we sort of fast-tracked, cheat the system a little bit. And over time, so I'm talking, excuse me, maybe 3 months or 6 months of work, you then see a participant that is actively engaging in a group environment with people that they never used to know, smiling, laughing, having fun. All of a sudden there's additional support around them because our team, our occupational therapist, has done an external referral to adult social care, for example. And in that moment, without sounding too much of a cliche, change that person's life, right? All from, oh my goodness.
Don't worry.
I told you I was poorly. We've changed that person's life for the better. And that case study then gets better. So the OT identifies volunteering opportunities. So all of a sudden, they've moved from participant to volunteer. And in that volunteer role, they've built up employability skills. And then that, oh my goodness. And in that moment, you're looking at a 9-month journey, perhaps, of someone engaging in their local community leisure centre. I hate to forget that point because I think that's crucial. As in, this is a local community resource that you can wake up out of your bed and walk to. they've had the right support and expertise to provide that initial stepping stone of support to give them the confidence and empower them to live and lead happier and healthier lifestyles. And by the end of that 9 months, that individual's got paid employment. And you think of that journey from socially isolated, highly anxious, to where you are now, you go, what an unbelievable case study. And that happens in an abundance with lots of participants. And when I say employment, that's not necessarily with us. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But we're building the skills for that individual to go out there into the world and lead more independent lives, but also gain employment, and so on and so on.
It's just incredibly powerful to listen to that kind of case study, because, you know, there is so much that fitness does for people, and it's just services like the services that you guys are offering can change a person's life. And again, like you said, focusing on that person in front of you, even if it's just one person in one community, but if you're doing that, if you're able to kind of then multiply that. So just to kind of round off our conversation then, because it's been really interesting listening to everything that you have to say, Jake. Really, your passion just shines through. If we want to get this out to more people, we want people to know about sports confidence and spread the word and get more people involved as well. Where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, totally. So we currently deliver services on the front line in Essex predominantly, and then we have tipped over into a few London boroughs. So we're in Havering, Waltham Forest and Westminster. We've also gone the other way down the A12 to Suffolk. So we've got a nice foundation of delivery across those areas. The best way to get in contact is to explore our website. That's got lots of information on that talks about what we do and where. And for as much as I've spoken about delivery models, we've got different pieces of work. So we do lots of work in primary care space. We do lots of work specifically within health inequalities. We do long COVID pieces of work. We've done strength and balance. So like I mentioned earlier around, we're always adapting and changing. That's what we do. We pick up the triple threat, which is our occupational therapists, our coaches, and our voices of lived experience, and we can apply that to different settings. In addition to our website, we've got social media channels. So we're lively on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram page. That's
we'll
where you
out
can
to
get
all
in
of
touch.
those socials. Thank you so much, Jake. Real pleasure having you on the show today. Yeah.
Thanks, Jake.
You've been listening to the Get Better in Chelmsford podcast with your hosts, Richard Brinkley and Tasha Katz. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe. And remember, you can tune into the full series wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for listening.